There are two different foil grips that you'll be looking at when it comes to fencing. The first one is the French grip. This is what you'll be using when you're learning. It helps keep your hand strength and it gets you a little bit more familiar with the blade and what sort of movements you need to use to manipulate the blade. But when you get more advanced and you start competing, you're going to gravitate to the pistol grip. Now the pistol grip has a lot better point control and it's a lot faster, so it requires less movement from your fingers and wrist in order to manipulate the blade. But as a drawback, it does kind of weaken your hand strength. But these are the two principal grips that you'd be looking at. French grip, this is for you when you're learning, and then the pistol grip, this is for you when you're competing. Two grips. The fencing uniform has a number of things that you need to be familiar with before you start fencing and hitting one another. We're going to go through those step by step so you can see what they're like. The first piece of safety equipment is the chest guard. It's a hard plastic that goes on front. This is a male chest guard. There's also a female chest guard, but they're the same thing. It's hard plastic that goes over your chest. The second piece of safety equipment is the underjacket, the plastron. It's a half jacket. It only protects your dominant side, whereas your non-dominant side is not facing any danger, so it doesn't need that jacket. But plastron goes over top of the chest guard. Our fencing jacket goes on top of those first two items. This is a right-handed jacket. That means the zipper is going to be on the left side. If you're a left-handed fencer, it's going to be on the right side. There are also jackets where it doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed, and the zipper goes down the center of your jacket. But this is the largest piece of protective gear. It's your jacket. It's designed to stop the blade from breaking and injuring you, but if you get hit really hard, you can get bruised. That's why we're wearing the chest guard. The fourth piece of equipment is your glove. You only get one glove, goes on your weapon hand. You'll notice that has a nice long sleeve. This is called the gauntlet. This goes over your jacket sleeve so that when you are fencing, if a blade should hit your arm, it doesn't ride up inside your sleeve against your arm. So this keeps everything outside. Our last piece of safety equipment is perhaps the most important, and that's the mask. Now, looking at the mask, all the protection is afforded to the front and sides of the mask. There is no protection in the back. This is because we're a linear sport. We go forward, we go backwards, we don't turn our head, and that keeps the back of our head safe, while the front is protected by a heavy mesh and a strong bib. When you put it on, you just slide it on your face, you secure the Velcro, and you're good to go. In fencing, the target area is divided into quarters, and what we use to divide these are called lines. Now there are four principal lines that we need to get familiar with in fencing, regardless of what weapon you're in. But here in foil, the lines that we're going to be talking about are the inside and outside line. So this is your weapon side, your dominant side versus your non-dominant side. Those are your inside and outside lines. And then your high line and your low line. That's anything really above your ribs and everything below your ribs. Now, when we're talking about these lines, it's really important to understand what they're referring to. When you're in the on guard position, your outside line is what is most visible to your opponent to hit because it is the closest. Your inside line is deeper in the target, so attacking it means it's farther away. And you'll notice this, that when you lunge, your inside line flattens out, so it's less prominent. You can't really hit it as well. It's your outside line that you're concerned about. Now, when we're talking about high lines and low lines, if you are fencing, you have the option of attacking the high line, so the shoulder, that area, the chest, or if your opponent is not protecting their lower line, you can attack lower, kind of against their abdomen. So you have options. Now, when we're talking about these four lines, it's really important that when you are fencing, you are focusing on attacking the most prominent target. So usually this is attacking your opponent's outside line, because attacking the inside line, it's deeper, it's farther away, and it can disappear. And when you're fencing, attacking the high line is usually a little bit easier because your opponent might lean forward a little bit, making it closer. whereas when you're attacking the low line, some people have a habit of sucking it in, which means the low line sort of displaces. It's hard to find. But those are our 4 lines: inside and outside line, high line, and low line. Blade positioning is really important when you're getting started in fencing. It really helps you establish a good habit. Now, first let's talk about the bad habits that can develop when you're learning. Some fencers will tend to favor a neutral guard. That means their blade positioning is in the center of their target area. Others might even be further over. These are bad. They're not good positionings for your blade because it's going to have trouble extending. And when we're looking at lesson 3, you'll see how this affects your defensive game as well. So when we're talking about blade positioning, you want to make sure you're favoring the outside line, not center and not the inside line. Remember, the outside line is closer to your opponent, so this is where you want your blade to keep your opponent cagey, keep them away from hitting you. Now, in the on-guard position, your guard should be more or less in the same distance as your shoulder moving from your body. You don't want it too far out, you don't want it too far in. So right about here. And this allows you to make nice, smooth extensions of your arm. When you attack, there's nothing impeding you, so you can extend your arm, and then you can snap back to on guard. Now, if you are in a neutral or deep line for your blade positioning, extending your arm is going to be a little bit more difficult. You're not getting as much reach. So again, favor the outside line for your blade positioning. It really helps make everything easier when you are attacking. When you're holding your foil, make sure that you're holding it correctly. You really don't want to bruise yourself when you're manipulating the blade. I've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm going to bring it up again. You want the pommel of your grip sitting in the meat of your palm. It should not be past here. Now, here's another reason why this is really important. If your thumb is riding up against the guard, when you hit, the force is going to travel through and you're going to jam your thumb. That's going to really hurt. You'll get blisters, you can bruise your thumb, it's all sorts of bad stuff. So you want to make sure there's a good amount of distance between your thumb and the guard. So when you hit, you're not going to jam your thumb. So again, let it sit right here in the meat of your palm, and make sure you've got a good distance between your thumb and the base of your guard. Right of way is a tricky thing to understand. Fencers oftentimes struggle with it in the beginning when they're learning the sport. Now, when we're talking about right of way, you may hear me use right of way and priority interchangeably. They mean the same thing. They're just referring to the convention of rules that help separate action and determine who gets the point. Now, let's look at how we can gain right of way. The easiest way of gaining right of way when we're talking about the attack is the advance. You have to step forward, so a march. If you are the first one to start moving forward, you have right of way. You have priority. Now, it's also gained through correct action. So if you are lunging, so long as you are hitting before your foot is landing, it's going to be your point. Now, if you're both attacking each other, if you make a clean, nice, successful action with your lunge, and your opponent does an incorrect lunge, that is, they've withheld their arm, or they're just breaking up the action, you're going to have priority over them. So again, you gain your right of way by being the first person to start. Losing right of way is just about as easy as it is to gain. So let's start with movement first. The easiest way of losing right of way is stopping. So if you are marching, you're moving, as soon as you stop, you lose right of way. Another way of losing it is instead of advancing, you start to retreat. By nature, the retreat is not an attack, so you won't have right of way. Another way you can lose right of way is, again, in the action itself. So if you're in the on-guard position and you lunge, as soon as that foot lands, your action is over, you no longer possess right of way. So if you lunge, you haven't hit, and then your opponent runs onto the blade and they hit you, you're not getting the point because you have to hit before your foot lands. So again, if your action is over, you've lost right of way. Now here's a quick analogy to help break down right of way and how it works. Let's think of it as dodgeball. When you have the ball, you have right of way. It's your ability to attack. You can throw the ball. When you don't have the ball, you don't have right of way. So the ways you can lose the ball, if I throw it at you and you catch it, then you have right of way. If you stop your action, it's like putting the ball on the ground. First person to move, they've picked up the ball, they have right of way. So again, having the ball means you are in charge. Priority, same idea. Right of way is about making sure you started first and your action is stronger and better than your opponent.